This is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
Hi, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the book of esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet, William as the Professor.
From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show live stream. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, Jeff Cohen, Victoria Taylor, Lindsay Poss. For those of you who are new to the after show, welcome to the official after show of esports. What we do here is we cover everything that just didn't make it into the podcast. It's all the same news, the incredible stories, news, events, everything happening in the industry. We still look at it from a business and C-suite perspective. We still dissect and analyze everything happening in the industry, but it's just everything we couldn't fit into that 1 hour podcast. And we get to do it, most importantly, with you guys, the viewers. It's interactive, so we encourage you, ask questions. You know, there's a bunch of regulars that participate, but if you're lurking, please feel free. Don't be shy. Challenge us, get in our faces, ask questions, join the conversation. We welcome it. And to everyone else who is a regular, thank you guys for coming every week. We really appreciate it. Thank you for all the participation. Thank you for telling others about the after show. We really love doing this. And so the more you guys show up and the more you participate, the more we love doing this every single week. So all right. How's everyone doing? Jeff, you're still fiddling with your tech, right?
I just found out that my light has Wi-Fi apparently, but I can't figure out how to connect to it. So
groundbreaking.
Yeah. I don't know. I learn something new every day on this podcast, every week.
You do know that
about how bad I am.
How
at
good do I
technology.
look, right?
Wow, nice haircut, William.
looking good, William.
It's just incredible. I just nailed it all the way.
Is it a haircut or is it just coiffed?
It's literally just like I try to dress up for the podcast live stream. You know, you gotta look your best when you're dealing with such fantastic folks. You know.
There you go. No, how's everyone doing this week? Everyone had a good week? Busy? Not busy? Playing tons of games? Not playing tons of games?
Watching tons of Netflix documentaries.
Oh no!
Did anyone watch the Dota anime series? Because I saw it pop up on my.
No, I saw it pop
feed.
up though. I haven't watched it.
So I haven't watched it yet, but my buddies have been texting me about it left and right. Their verdict is twofold. One, it's adorable that all the elves have New Zealand accents. That's apparent. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they've been telling me. And they've also said it's surprisingly good. Like now, granted, I mean, you know, I don't know what the arbiter of taste is on video game anime adaptations. Like, I don't know what bar they had set for the show itself to clear, you know, like, but it might be bad. You know, honestly, guys, like, we all made fun of The Witcher before we watched it. You know, I was definitely like, it's not going to be any good. And then I liked it a lot, you know, so I could believe. We'll see. And apparently their Castlevania adaptation was surprisingly good too. I watched maybe a little bit of that, and it wasn't for me, but it was definitely better than, you know, an off the shelf, you know, discount studio job, you know.
I didn't see the Dota series in the Netflix top 10 though, and I feel like that's where you have to be if you want to be a big success. I don't know how much that matters, but like that top 10 people tend to talk about it, you know?
I think that matters a lot, right? Like, I think Netflix's business model is you're either in the top, like you're either a reason to subscribe. Like, they have enough backlog content, right? You're either a resubscribe or you add no value to the platform, you know?
Guys, we had an amazing podcast guest this week. Before I jump into other news, I just want to tease the podcast tomorrow. We had Lagan Nash, who is the chief revenue officer at Misfits Gaming, and she had some incredible insight on Misfits, obviously, and how they look at sponsorship and how they have the interesting trifecta of esports franchises. And interestingly enough, she used to be at Fox and Disney, and so she has this background in media It was a really, really great interview, lots of fun, and she had some incredible insight. I will say also we covered a few stories with her, which I will just show you. I'll tease here. One of them being obviously the Misfits Gaming and SoFi partnership, which she gave some interesting sort of inside baseball on. We also talked about this new esports arena getting the go-ahead in Chicago, and this one not costing $500 million. This one only being $30 million, which is interesting. And then we also touched on
what's
Rocket League.
What's the capacity for that
1,000 seats.
Okay.
So on a per seat basis, it's considerably cheaper still.
I'm not sure how many people fit in the U bump that's on top of their interestingly designed complex, but
I'd be less bullish. I'd be a lot less bullish on this one than the Canada one.
Really?
Oh, I think we liked this one more, Jeff. I think we liked this one more. Yeah.
No, we disagree. But continue. We can get into. I do want to debate that, but continue.
The other one is No Man's Land of size with like tons of spending. Just to inflate people's egos. This one actually makes, I think, good business sense. And then the third story, maybe the biggest of all, even though it was the smallest article of them all, is Rocket League going to mobile. So Rocket League earlier this year went free to play, and now it has completed its journey as a AAA game and will have a mobile version coming out. So that was an interesting discussion around, do we think Rocket League Mobile will have a huge impact on the esports scene? Those are the stories we covered on the podcast. Jeff, did you want to before we go on to news stories?
Why do you even ask Jeff? Of course he wants to weigh in.
I do want to weigh in.
Okay, weigh in.
But we don't have to. Whatever you run the show here, Paul.
Weigh in.
I mean, I just personally would be more bullish on the bigger stadium. I think.
Why?
Because 1,000 seat stadium is like, that is, I don't know, if it's not big enough. And you're spending 30 million. If you were building 1,000 seat stadium, you were spending $2.5 million. I'd be like, okay, fine. $30 million is a lot of capital for 1,000 seat stadium. Like the 1,000 seat stadium is like my high school football field.
It's cheaper.
It doesn't matter on a per seat basis. It's a matter of how many people you can get in per event, because you get the multiplier effect, right? Of the food and beverage, and
you think there are more 7,000 people events than there are 1,000 people events?
I think you can fill up the same amount of events per year.
I don't know. I think if you run the math on it, I mean, just let's say it's $100 ticket. You only have to do. Please tell me I'm doing this math correctly. This is going to be embarrassing if I get it wrong. You only have to do like 300 events to earn the payout, to basically earn back your capital, assuming 100% return. Right.
Well, assuming 100.
Profit.
Yeah. I mean, assuming.
Yeah, but I mean, just like
profit margin.
Yeah. Just rough and tough. Right. So like,
yeah,
if you told me over a 10-year period, which is probably the lifetime of the stadium, could you fill 30 events a year with 1,000 people? I'd be like, seems super doable. You know what I mean? Like, so starting from that point, I
then
think
you just broke even.
Well, yeah, but like,
you're using like the most
extreme, right? Like as an ultra
example,
baseline,
because that's not a great return on investment.
But if you asked me, like, what calendar programming they would need, right? Like I get worried, particularly with all the stadiums that are going up, how many 5,000 seat stadiums you can actually fill, right? Like consistently, when there's so many stadiums all over the place, they're all competing for the same events. Like the reality is, there aren't a lot of events that can draw 5,000 people unless they're really marquee. No one's going to show up for a week. 5,000 fans won't show up for a weekly game. I don't think. We're not quite there yet, in the esports landscape.
And to me, 1,000.
I think Chris's comment here is actually pretty relevant. I mean, we've all been pretty hard on Allied, and kind of not even just us. I mean, the market has been hard on them. They spent $14 million on effectively what is 1,000 seat stadium in Las Vegas. Pretty good market, a lot of tourism, a lot of events. I mean, pretty much the mecca of events. They have not been able to make money on that.
Yeah,
so
but have you been to that? I mean, I don't want to go into the specifics of that facility, but have you been to that facility?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the way to build 1,000 seat facility. Just bluntly, right? Like and I don't want to criticize them. I'm not trying to, but like I think part of the problem with Allied was they were so early. They were building for a market they didn't quite know what was wanted yet. And I'm not sure. I think they were really phenomenal as first movers. I think it's exceptional that they took that risk. They'll always have that tentpole flag, but I think they were building for a lot of different use cases with that facility. Whereas I think now we've understood media and spectatorship as the use case to look at for these larger scale facilities.
Yeah, I guess, and I want to hear Lindsay and Victoria's thoughts. I don't want to hog the conversation, but I guess for me, it's if it's just an esports stadium, then yeah, I think the $30 million one, lower risk. Like if I really believe that the Toronto one was just built for esports, I would be as negative as possibly can be. I just think it's not just for esports, and I think you will get a better return having 7,500 seats where you can actually have concerts and soccer games and like high school football playoff game, like 1,000 people. You literally my high school lacrosse team used to have 1,000 people in the state. Like that's not a professional thing. That's literally just like
tell us more about your high school lacrosse team. I
Classic
want to know more
Jeff
about it.
bringing in high school.
Were they the Permian Panthers? Did they play under Coach Taylor?
No, but the Permian Panthers got like 30,000.
Did you tap a sign that said "Clear eyes, full hearts" every time before you went on the
William, we already know your opinions on lacrosse players based on your TED talk, so we can move. I want to hear what
Sorry,
Victoria
can't resist the Friday Night Lights joke. I love that TV series.
Lindsay, you were going to say something, or Victoria? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just was laughing about Jeff's lacrosse reference.
I saw you both unmute. That's why.
Oh yeah, it was for the lacrosse comment specifically. But no, I completely agree with Jeff here. I think that having a multi-purpose stadium with an actual crowd that's a reasonable size is a much better investment than a single-use stadium. And I feel like 30 million is a lot of money for a 1,000-person stadium.
I am never hiring you guys to manage my money. If you think that $500 million stadium is the better, 7,000 seats is not enough for a concert. Taylor Swift is not going to perform at that stadium.
Obviously not.
Big esports events are not going to that stadium.
Whatever. I mean, you can have 10,000 with floor seats.
The 1,000-person stadium and the 7,000-person stadium have the same problem.
What other events can you have? What other events can you have in the 1,000-person stadium besides esports?
Well,
high school lacrosse.
You can have.
That's not a big market.
You literally can't.
It's way more friendly to community esports events and to the regular home stands you see of these franchise leagues.
You know what else to me is community esports events? Helix Esports Centers. Guess how much they cost to build? $500,000, not 30 million.
Obviously, that's an even better business model, right? Like we're not debating the best business model.
I didn't say Helix versus a $30 million stadium. I'm saying $500 million stadium versus $30 million stadium.
But the Helix is not comparable to the $500 million stadium.
But what I'm saying is the $500 million stadium with 7,000 seats has the same problem Helix does and has the same problem the 1,000-person stadium does, which is you can't do big events. You can't do the 10,000, 20,000, 100,000. You just can't do those.
I think I don't think the $500 million stadium is like an awesome investment, to be honest. Like, I think it's very mid-tier, but I think you're really undervaluing the size of 5 to 7,500. Every single mid-tier musical artist will be there. When I saw One Republic, it was in a 7,000-person stadium. Like, they're not even mid-tier.
One Republic probably goes to gas stations in Lindsay's town. They perform at like 7-Eleven.
They perform at the Red Rocks Amphitheater, in case you're wondering.
Did you go see the Fray too? I love the Fray.
No, I've never seen the Fray.
All I want to tell you is I never knew. I never knew that everything.
I know Victoria agrees with me as well, so it's 3-2. All the guests agree. The regulars suck. We'll take over the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, everyone knows where I stand on the Toronto Stadium. But I mean, taking a step back here, I read this article about the Chicago Arena. And I think a lot of it has to do with how they position it. Like with the Toronto announcement, they very much so positioned it as a multi-purpose venue. And that definitely allowed me to say, yes, okay, this makes so much more sense. It just wasn't in all the articles I read about the Chicago space. It was strictly esports. It was talking about having the IMAX screen built in, player lounges, like a restaurant for players. It was very just esports focused. So yeah, the 1,000 people, I'm thinking it's pretty small for $30 million when there's no other talk of other use. That being said, I'm sure, to Lindsay's point, it could be used for so many different other events, for concerts. But it's
Local lacrosse
interesting.
teams.
Totally. But when we do compare it to the Helix centers, it's kind of hard to understand why they needed to spend so much. One thing I also thought was interesting is they're planning on starting to build it really soon. The one in Chicago versus the one in Toronto. I think it's going to take like what was it, like 3 years?
I bet you the Toronto one never sees the light of day.
Don't say that.
Weren't they going to build one of these in Philadelphia? Like I think like Comcast was going to build.
I think it's being built. It's under construction.
I was under the understanding that it like was kind of just like not actually going to get built. I don't know if that's true or not.
Oh, it's one of those projects that they.
Here's an interesting insight that came out of the podcast today. And by the way, Fabrizio, good evening from Brazil.
That's a great profile picture.
That is.
I really hope that's actually you.
Yeah.
If that is, send us a screenshot. I don't know. We'll send you some merch or something.
Please tell me you commissioned a Renaissance painter to.
One of the interesting insights that came out of our interview with Lagan Nash, again, the Misfits own an Overwatch League team, and they own a Call of Duty League team, and they own a League of Legends franchise, right? So they're in like the top 3 franchised leagues, arguably. And one of the interesting comments she had about Activision Blizzard was, yes, they are pivoting away from live events, but essentially, like functionally what's happening is they're just offloading all the live event burden to the teams. So it's going to be all on the teams. And so
which is a little, I mean, it's a little shocking, I think, to just absorb that fact for a second.
I mean, it's not shocking because that's kind of probably how it works in traditional sports, but like there better be some economics shifting hands. Like, you can't expect to take 50% of the profits, but have none of the risk. I mean, I guess you can if you literally own the sport, but you can't expect owners to invest in your sport for very long if you expect them to put up all the capital, take all the risk, and get none of the reward.
In this context, though, right, would you guys agree that we may see more of these smaller stadiums being driven by, if I've put 30 million or 50 million in total across 2 franchises, right, what's another 15 to 30 million for a stadium now that all the live event sort of baggage has been shifted over to me?
Yeah, but this was sort of the point I tried to raise on the podcast, and I'll try to make it more explicitly now, is there's a real problem with building these things because of how quickly events are moving up the scale curve. You know what I mean? So the classic problem with venues is you definitely don't want to build ones that are too small because you leave a bunch of unsold tickets on the table. But if you build one that's too big, it's also a disaster because your events feel empty, right? And you've way overbuilt for your market. So there's a huge challenge. And the problem is, if you sort of believe that esports spectator viewership is going to go up exponentially on sort of like a clip, which it sort of should, if you think about how popular the sport is, think of what's happening on traditional sport viewership. Like, I do expect, I don't know how exponential the curve is, but I would expect a pretty rapid increase in event participation. It makes it very hard to build these venues because you're only at your sweet spot of the market for a brief period of time. You're either chronically over or undersized. And I think that's a really underappreciated problem in the space right now, is like, how do you build for that scale curve? Because again, I promise you, the solution is not just build as big as you need to get to, because go to any event that is filled to 60% capacity and it is an awful experience. It just feels dead, right? Like you cannot overbuild these things, They can always put the cardboard cutouts they've been putting, right? At traditional sports. Robert says graduation, but Robert, I'm not.
He's talking about to fill for things that can.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Oh,
I mean, there are
Robert.
1,000. I think there are more.
That's
uses.
not 1,000. He's talking about 5,000 to 7,500.
No,
he's
really?
talking
He was talking about the small. He was talking about the small esports stadium.
I
Which,
went to
depending on your graduating class,
school,
it could be 1,000. It could
200 kids. If it's 1,000, you're only letting them each bring 2 people, basically. You're just
how mathematical and pragmatic here, okay? Good point. Don't worry about it.
You know what?
Christian says, what about monetizing hybrid events at these new stadiums? Sell X amount of in-venue tickets and sell Y number of virtual attendee experiences. William, you're shaking your head.
It's a really good idea, Christian. It's a really, really good idea. The problem is if that's your business model, if you can sell X amount of, in-person tickets and Y amount of virtual tickets, I would strongly suggest that you just sell the virtual tickets, because they'll be way higher margin and way lower risk, right? The reality, I think, is, and the belief in the market today, is the physical experience is cannibalistic of the virtual experience. So I'm not like, if you can get it, great. And I know BlizzCon does that with the virtual event tickets and everything. Like, there are models in market, but fundamentally, like, if you could get all the benefits for hosting an event with none of the capex, right, and none of the, like, it would be just such a better business model. I'd say go virtual only, but there's a reason.
Why do you? I don't think that necessarily cannibalizes it. I mean, I think you wouldn't have a ton of demand for the virtual ticket, I think. But then as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, like, this is literally boxing's entire business model. Now, boxing is a dying sport, so now I'm reconsidering my reconsidering. But literally, pay-per-view is that's the exact model, right? UFC sort of does that. I think now they have most of them where they're free, but like, this is not a crazy model.
By the way, there's other things. Disney Plus does this now. It's actually a pretty interesting business model. What?
Okay, hold on. Can we ask the more general esports question here to all of you, which is, in a world that's like in a non-COVID world. So let's pretend the world has gone back to normal. Okay,
I'm good at pretending.
Do live esports events directly cannibalize, or does a virtual ticket directly cannibalize a live ticket? In other words, the person who may otherwise have gone to a live event, will they buy a virtual ticket instead? Or do those Venn diagrams not overlap at all? Do those circles not overlap at all in a Venn diagram? People
of course, there's overlap. There has to be some overlap.
It's the question of how
perfect
big
overlap, right? Because perfect overlap means total cannibalization.
No, it's not a perfect overlap, but I just think that there's a lot of people, like, also it depends where the event's taking place. Like, there's a lot of people who like teams, but they don't, like, they're not going to get on a plane to go to that event. And I think that they would purchase a virtual ticket if it meant that they could take part in that. So I think in that sense, but if it's accessible to them, then I think that they would go. I think they enjoy the hype. They enjoy the scene.
You would just price discriminate, right? So the virtual ticket would be a lot cheaper. So people that wanted to go would go pay more. Otherwise, people would just watch it on TV. The real question is, we've sort of, short of pay-per-view, which we just talked about with boxing, is pretty much it's kind of a dying business model. Like, why would you gate, unless you're going to have 3 tiers, right? You're going to have the in-person, you're going to have the pay-per-view, which gives you something special, something extra, and then obviously free. Like, why would you want your league to be gated to only people that pay to watch it on a stream? You know what I mean? Like, you can get, in theory, you can get much more money from advertisers by having more, anyone who wants to watch it without gating the amount of people that can watch it.
That's a good point.
Gabriel asks a good question. Should you build for today or for the next 5 years? I mean, that is I think the question that we tried to tackle on the podcast, Gabriel. So I encourage you to listen tomorrow. But it's a great one, right? And I think William had said it very eloquently on the podcast in terms of sort of how you make decisions today. And it is kind of this sliding scale of how do you anticipate? If you build too small, esports outgrows you. If you build too big, then you end up with empty seats. Does anyone here have thoughts in terms of what is the right answer today? In terms of how you scale a venue correctly?
You build a 7,500 person stadium for $500 million. I'm just kidding.
I think you build small with low amounts of capital that you can be paid back from. And then once you outgrow that stadium, you can always go into a soccer stadium, and then you can go into a football stadium. And then eventually, if it makes sense to build, like, I think we're years away from having a dedicated 75,000 seat esports stadium. Like, we're years away from that.
Yeah, you either build to expand, right? So you basically build with venues that there are options to build out over time, or with plans to replace quickly, right? Yeah. Or the other option is you build multi-purpose. You can do I have no problem if you're building a 20,000 seat facility if it's for major league, if it's for multiple things. And this isn't not being bullish on the future of esports. Like, I have to stress that so much. Like, it's just, I really think that Jeff says we're years away from selling out 75,000 stadiums. That's incredible. When you think in 2001, like you could like the StarCraft World Championships were like a global anomaly.
4 guys in a basement.
Yeah, people are like, StarCraft World. Oh my god! Like literally, like I'll always remember, because I found it for the book, like that Quake World Championships. The very first one where the guy won John Romero's car. Like they're basically in the basement of some trade conference, and it's just a bunch of dudes who've lugged their computers to a desk, and like and that's like not long ago. That's like 20 years ago, guys. It's not that long. So the fact that we've gone from literally like you couldn't, like no one wants to watch it all, it's a joke, to, okay, 5,000, is it 1,000 or 7,000 seat venue that's the right size? It's huge, because remember, all of this moves, and I really mean to say it moves exponentially, right? Like I think it was as hard to go from a 500 person need to a 1,000 person need as it is to go from a 7,000 person need to a 14,000 person need. Like it's as hard to make that transition. So we're not, like, being years away from a football stadium sellout is much closer, particularly when you consider football stadiums take 5 years to build, in some cases, right?
To be fair, Jeff didn't say a football stadium sellout. He said a dedicated football-sized arena built for esports.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we all agree. You could sell out.
Yeah.
If you did like some massive, had the right people in play, had the right teams, you could sell out 75,000 seats one time tomorrow. It's just a matter of, could you do that week in and week out dedicated to esports? I doubt it.
That was William. I watched that event. It was Carmack who was giving away his Ferrari. That's
right, John Carmack, JC.
And watching Thresh win that is what made me like dream of being a professional gamer.
That was a really important moment for my childhood too, by the way. I remember that and being like, that is so cool that you went. Yeah. But like the total value of that prize was a used Ferrari. It wasn't worth a lot.
Pretty low.
It was like 20.
Although today it's very collectible. I think.
Can you imagine if like
a used Ferrari is only $21,000?
Back then it was like an older model.
I bought the wrong car. Why didn't anyone tell me this about like 6 months ago?
I mean, I'm not going to give you car.
No, I'm sure those are.
Paul's got a bunch of Ferraris. Paul, what would you sell me? Would you sell me your used Ferrari? Let's do this transaction right now.
Those
do this on camera live.
Ferraris, for the record, are very collectible.
Can you imagine if it was like the Overwatch League Grand Finals and they're like, all right, here's the big present. It's Bobby Codex old car. Like,
also,
congrats,
it was like
guys.
Customized
super nice.
For him.
It was a super nice BMW 5 years ago. There's barely any wear or tear on the passenger seats. Like,
only 100 clicks or 100,000 clicks on it.
Yeah, it's only 120,000. But like, this is like, can you imagine? And like they're getting out like Louis Vuitton has like the wrap for the used car that comes out. And like, we've come a long way. We've come a long way.
We have. Cam says, as someone who's never been to a physical esports event, I'd really like to. I think locally, I'd rather be in person. Large events in other countries, I'd prefer virtual. Yeah, so that I think that everyone's in agreement that it's not. There's not like direct cannibalization. Like there's not pure overlap. There is space to sell both. Christian says, what about selling pre-event or post-event virtual experiences to not cannibalize the in-person event tickets?
That's more like it, is like you sell into the anticipation curve with sort of private stuff. You sell into post. This is what, like, have you guys ever been to like a fan conference? Like, has anyone been to like a Star Trek convention? Like, yeah, Paul's like, I've been.
No.
Like they're the way they get you at these and I'm not saying I've been to a Star Trek convention. I'm saying
he said he's been to several Star Trek conventions.
Hypothetically, had I gone, I expect this is how these would operate. To go see LeVar Burton in person.
You went to like a Transformers convention, didn't you?
What?
Didn't you go to like
BotCon?
a Transformers? Yeah. How did they sell you a BotCon? Did you get to like meet Optimus Prime? What was the deal?
Time out. Yes, I did. I did meet. I think it's Peter Cullen. I did meet him. Great guy. But I wasn't at a Transformers convention. I was a panel speaker at BotCon.
Well, I think Darren here is making some good points.
Yeah, I'm going to get to
BotCon.
Hang on, I'm going to get to it. Cam says, I'd love to engage with the esports more than just sitting in a Twitch chat. I mean, this is why everyone's banking on live events coming back in a big way, Cam. I think there's no question there. Christian says, we may not be ready for grand esports stadiums, but what about Asia? I mean, but they're reusing stadiums there. Like League of Legends finals are not happening in dedicated built esports stadiums, right? They are reusing existing infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Darren says each region city will have different size of stadiums. We need big and we need small venues. Both are good sizes. There isn't right and wrong. There are options. It's an interesting.
This is way too pragmatic of an answer, Darren.
Yes.
Wow.
This is the point of the live stream. We argue here.
Definition of
But no, he's right.
definition of
He's
the
absolutely right.
liberal arts major bringing out like a truth here. Like,
He's right.
Darren,
I'm not
you
a
are
fan
not
of-
allowed to agree with everyone. You can only
I'm
agree with some
not
of
a
us.
fan of the 1,000-person stadium. I'm just not a fan of it costing $30 million. Like, that's the hang up. Build the stadium, but like,
But
damn,
per
does it need to be
seat, it's
$30 million?
Another one.
Yeah, but the other one can do a lot more things.
Okay.
You're still
all right,
undercounting that.
guys, the
We
viewers
gotta
are going
move
to
on.
get bored.
We
The
gotta
viewers are
move
gonna
on.
get bored. Even
Pam
I
says, for sure, Darren, I think the stadiums will have a large variety of sizes. Agreed. Darren says, Duke basketball, Cameron Indoor Stadium has 9K max cap versus UNC Dean Smith Center has 20K. Which one is better? Each serve their purpose. Darren, I think everyone agrees with you. The question is, like, in terms of new construction, right? What should be built in the context of what facilities already exist? I think that is the struggle for most teams, cities, et cetera, right? Because every city has certain number of facilities. They have a 10,000, auditorium where the, New York Philharmonic plays, and then you have, where the Yankees play, and then you have, somewhere in between. And then the question is, what should esports build
And
around that?
To answer your question here, I'm pretty sure the answer is Cameron Indoor, but just objectively. But I see your point.
Yeah.
Oh God!
But
are
I
you
also
a
think
Duke
it's somewhat
fan?
city dependent.
No,
too.
I'm not a Duke fan. It's just Cameron Indoor is like a historic play. It's like saying what's better, like Wrigley Field or New Yankee Stadium.
You
Like
literally answered a rhetorical question.
Objectively, Wrigley Field is better, right? Like,
but to be clear,
Now that they have the
it
lights,
also
of
is
course.
city dependent.
Right.
Because
No,
if we believe that existing
I'm
facilities
kinda
should be
kidding.
reused,
Yeah.
right?
kind of kidding. I know there was no right answer, but yeah.
Chris
Let's
says
move on.
Evo-
We beat this to a pulp.
Evo found success in Vegas by becoming an FGC convention. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's a good point. Guys, no
not-
one's going to watch anymore if we're not going to be fun to do if we just debate like seat sizes and stadiums. We got to move on.
Darren
I
says,
want to talk about the Toronto Stadium forever.
Darren says small cap experiences are cool and large cap experiences are cool. Darren, you come on. Pick a
Darren,
side
stop
here.
being right. Stop being
Yeah,
right.
stop being
Darren.
right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another topic you guys talked about on the podcast.
Okay, how about we do a brand, like the biggest news story of the week.
Yeah. The biggest mystery.
And this is from Shaq News. Lawn mowing simulator announced for Xbox during id at Xbox Twitch Gaming Showcase.
Mm-hmm.
This is the major story that came out. No, I'm just kidding. We don't need to. Anyone have thoughts on lawnmower simulator? Has the sim world gone too far when we're doing simulation of lawn mowing? No one thinks this is too far.
Can you give us an overview of the game? What
Yeah,
what
can
are
we
the
see a
details?
trailer?
It just says that it promises the most realistic and detailed mowing simulator ever. It's coming exclusively to Xbox. They showed a 35-second trailer. There's going to be multiple game modes: career, free roam.
Free roam. Cut your neighbor's lawn. Make a little pocket money.
There's a serious gaming business question here, which is right. Simulation has been a growth area, I would argue, right? Especially in racing during the pandemic. It's not the biggest area of gaming, obviously, right? But sim has been around in some form for a while now, whether it's sports or other things, right? Is this too far? Right? We've seen like the what is it, the bus simulator, where you're driving long periods of time. We saw Microsoft Flight Simulator make a big splash.
Flight Simulator is cool. I mean, I just hope that whenever we get to this Ready Player One future and we're all playing around in the holodeck and whatever, flying around in Avatar, if I'm mowing my own lawn at that point, just come kill me with my virtual gun.
No,
Please,
Jeff, you're
it
going to be
can't
like,
be this
wait,
bad.
my lawnmower has Wi-Fi? It can mow the lawn by itself, and I've been turning on my lawnmower all these years?
I mean, it's just ridiculous. But
I'll
to
be in
take
the
it back to
holodeck,
the
and you'll be
business,
sitting there with your router flicking
I
it
guess
on
to
and off.
ground it in a business sense for a second, I mean, EA, when they added laundry to the Sims, it was one of the more they got a bigger engagement boost from that than really any of their like packs that they had done in a while. So, these things, like, for whatever reason, people like to engage with it. So,
Jeff, let me just challenge you. You were so down, I feel like, on the whole Tiger Woods golf Take-Two like game, right? Like PGA Tour Golf, the new one with Tiger Woods on the cover, or
be
whatever.
Great.
Like you said, like, why should we care about this? It only sells like 2 million copies.
Well, it turns out I might be wrong because EA also announced the golf game, so they might know more than I. But these two companies clearly. But my point was just that what the demand has been historically. It's just not that big of a game. I do think golf is getting more popular, and particularly Tiger right now is kind of in the news. So I think it's interesting, and clearly they are probably, I'm sure both EA and Take-Two have done enough kind of survey and consumer demand work to probably have a thesis that golf is getting popular enough where it will kind of start to scale. But my only point was that historically at 2 million units a year, it's just not that relevant relative to what we typically talk about.
Does it bother you that we got a lawnmower simulator before a lacrosse simulator? Is that
all right?
Yes.
All right.
I mean, I guarantee you there'd be more demand for that than a
Cam says,
simulator.
finally, I can mow lawns during the dead of winter.
I like the lawn mowing. I think that mowing a lawn is something a small pleasure a lot of people have. Like sometimes it's just these mundane tasks. Something that I find disgusting is how people watch, like, what's it called, Dr. Pimple Popper, and like there's games, like there's mobile games where you go onto someone's face and you pop pimples. And
Why are you attacking me right now? This is really necessary.
See, people love it. People love it, and I've never understood it, but I guess that there's like a pleasure in like doing that in real life.
I'm not one that enjoys mowing lawns, but I assume that someone who would probably enjoys being outside, maybe the smell of grass, it's spring, it's nice out, not like the monotony of mowing a lawn.
I don't know.
To be very fair, there's a category of game that we don't really appreciate very much in sort of the North American market that's pretty big in other markets. And it's the relaxation game. Like in Japan, I think like it's called like the after bath game or whatever, like, or before bath. I can't remember. But like this idea that basically like not all gaming experiences need to be very intense and amp you up and demanding. Like just like gaming can get you really high energy, it can also get you chill and relaxed. And I've certainly played, my fair share of video games, particularly more of the art that do a very good job of kind of chilling you out and getting you. So I can definitely see that like there's a real market for people, because I don't think it's about the challenge with these games. I think it's about like the state of mind you get to when you mow your lawn. And yeah, simulated experience, if it helps you deliver that, like, I like some pretty stupid stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like people can make fun of me all I want for, like, I know it's something stupid that I like to do. Like, I don't know. I guess I don't like anything stupid. Everything I like is great. But
I completely agree with what you're saying. Like, this is why people do the paint by number. The paint by number game. It's the exact same thing. It's a relaxation. And then to Jeff's point, people who like being outside, maybe it's a ride-on mower, they got their beer, maybe. But then I also think about it of more like nurture games, like where you're just like taking care of something. Like you think about the Farmville craze, right? I mean, the game itself, a Tamagotchi. It doesn't interest me, but it's a relaxation. It's just maintaining something. It's just something to do. You go in, you check on it. I'm assuming your grass is growing, and you got to make sure you mow it. Like, I try to think about this game.
All of these things are literally just slot machines with pretty designs. It's all you're falling for.
All right, guys, we are literally hemorrhaging fans right now. Like, this is.
Gabriel says, just why. Christian says, lawnmower simulator, LOL. So we don't have too many fans so far. Robert says, emulates the sound of their new console.
Robert, you're 2 for 2 with the witty observations.
Cam says ray tracing. Cam, I don't know if we need ray traced grass, but I mean, I guess anything's possible. Chris says, get that esports Midwest market. The Europeans love bus simulators. It's so true, Chris. There is probably a very specific market for this. And Robert says, should we have stopped at Goat Simulator? Clearly not. The market wants more simulation games, and they're going to get it. I think the take I had on this was, both consoles I feel have had a little bit of lackluster exclusives, and this seems to continue, right? Like none of them have had you'd think with such a major new console cycle, and it's been what, 7 years since the last one, you'd have more giant exclusives than this.
Well,
I don't
all
know.
of Bethesda titles. I mean, like there's
but
some
no
pretty
new
good ones
games.
coming down the pipe, you know.
Yeah, we'll see if they come this year. Anyways,
Yeah.
let's move on. Let's talk about, again, I picked a couple of stories this week that were a little bit left field because we tend to talk about the same, like Activision, Blizzard, whatever.
I agree. Let's mix it up.
And so mixing it up a bit. This one was direct from PR Newswire, and it was Opera GX gaming browser exceeds 8 million active users. That's a 250% year-over-year growth rate, and they have an aggressive product roadmap planned to expand Opera GX well beyond current levels. Now, for those of you who don't know, Opera makes web browsers like Chrome or Edge. The Opera browser has been around for a while. Opera GX was a browser that they made targeted directly at the gaming audience. So the idea was the browser shouldn't get in the way of your gaming, and if you want to game in your browser, we want to enable it, right? So they tried to build in features that were specific for gamers. It's very lightweight because I don't know about you guys, but the way I game on PC is I always have a browser open on the second screen. The question I have for you guys, and I think this is the bigger question here, because yes, this is interesting growth, still very small numbers from a browser market perspective. Question I have for you guys is, we're seeing this trend of like XYZ, but for gamers, right? Like Discord, I feel like has brought this conversation to the forefront. It's like, it's Skype for gamers or Zoom for gamers or whatever, right? And now you're seeing browsers for gamers. Is this a trend that any of you think will accelerate? And what do we think is next? Like, what are the other areas of technologies or tools or things where we think they can be adapted for the gaming market more specifically?
It's a good one.
Lindsay, do you have any thoughts here?
I mean, I don't know that the market is fleshed out enough to fully answer that question. Like, I don't think that there's not a market for a browser for gamers, but I also don't know. I don't know if there's a big enough market to support one fully right now. I also don't know if services like Discord or Twitch won't just start making these things and hold them all under the same umbrella rather than having actually diversified companies who are offering these services for gamers. So in terms of what I think will happen, I think it's more likely that services like Discord and Twitch start offering individualized elements or separate services or additional services specifically for gamers. I don't know that I see like a new entrant yet.
Victoria?
Not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just always think that no matter what, there has to be unique value. So like Discord, it had to be really, really good for there to be that adoption. And I'd see the same thing with a browser. I think that if you're looking for people to change their behavior and try new services, if it's good and there's that added value and it just so happens to be targeted towards gamers and it's branded that way, then I think that yes, there can be infinite success. I just think that no matter what, like you can't just build something that's exactly the same as something else and just brand it differently. I think that to get that switch over, you'd still have to have that added piece of value, no matter what.
It's not just like gaming look and feel, right? There has to be some feature set that goes above and beyond.
Well, Paul, I know that you are like a diehard Discord fan, and I think that you have said that you believe Discord it's the best compared to any other server.
Yes, there's a lot of ways I think it could be better, but I definitely think in terms of the functionality for gamers specifically, it's the best. And definitely has applications outside of that. I see this bigger trend towards like, I think we're going to see more, knockoff's not the right word, but where you take something that we use daily, right? And I'm going to make a stupid example, but like Microsoft Word, but for gamers, right? Like, and I don't know, it has functionality where it's easier to drop in memes. Like there's a whole meme library built in or something like that, right? Like where you take something that we're already using, but apply it in an authentic way to the gamer audience and come up with a new product. I feel like I'm seeing more and more of these kind of plays have legs. William, I don't know if you were going to say
How
something.
about Twitter for gamers, but you call it Reddit, and it's even more toxic.
Sold. Check. Billions
Maybe.
of dollars.
Yeah.
But do you see integrations or do you see new products?
I see new products
Interesting.
before I see integrations.
I'm just not sure. Like, I sort of agree with you. And there are going to be plenty of new classes. Like, gaming is now just a big enough demographic that it makes sense to target, right? Like, just like any demographic gets large enough and people realize, oh, we can. The difference, I think, is when it's meaningful, when it's not, because there's two ways you can target a demographic. You can do it with sponsorships, right? Where it's basically like, we already have this, like, Toyota work. What esports team does Toyota work with? I can't remember.
Isn't it Overwatch League that they're?
Was it Overwatch League? Yeah.
Yeah.
So like Toyota is basically like, we don't need to build an Overwatch League car, but we can just partner with the league and sort of say, well, Toyota's the brand for Overwatch League. You know, so like the difference is when it crosses over from just the sponsorship lift and the affinity to an actual unique use case where you really need something that's custom built. And you know, there are definitely those use cases, but I think there will be a lot more great businesses built around them, you know, but I also think that a lot of these something for gamers are really just, they would be better served by sponsorship deals or closely integrated like a good example is like Herman Miller, right? Like Herman Miller's doing, but like, are they really doing, you know, total rebuild, startup, new chairs, or are they taking what's already working super well for Herman Miller, changing a few things to match this demographic and getting the lift? You know what I mean? Like I think a lot of the things that we're seeing for gamers today might be better off as just, like I said, close corporate sponsorship deals, you know?
It's a really good point, and I think that there's a huge continuum in terms of like how innovation averse someone would be. Like I think about mobile gamers and console gamers may be, you know, less technology driven. I'm not, you know, just saying maybe, and that maybe, you know, a PC gamer would have more use for something being, you know, quicker, better. There's these features, like to Paul's point, having that browser open. But if you have someone who's just strictly a console gamer or strictly a mobile gamer, I don't know if they would need those products as much. Yeah, I'm not sure.
What about underwear for gamers, where it's like an adult diaper? So if you're in the middle of a match and you got to go to the bathroom, you can just
Jeff,
go.
why would you give that
Chris.
idea away?
That's true. I shouldn't have said that.
You
Paul,
should
cancel the
Why
live
would you
stream.
do that?
Delete that.
We're
I mean, patent
none of
pending.
us are
No one
dead.
copy that or give me a royalty.
That's a
Just saying,
really
it's
good
good.
one. Yeah.
It's good. You can make
Cam
them
says-
cool, sexy, branded. I think
You
it's
could. You could.
Business of Esports adult diapers coming soon.
Coming soon.
Or sorry, gamer diapers. Gamer diapers.
Cam
Yep.
says, I switched to Opera a few weeks ago. Great browser. As a gamer, I want the fewest alt tabs possible. The more connectivity and fluidity in the programs I use, the better. Agreed.
Cool,
and I
Cam.
think people are going to exploit that. RGB diaper. Cam,
This exists?
again,
My idea
stop
exists.
giving the ideas away.
Cam, this is the sort of thing you don't. Yeah.
You were supposed to be our head of merchandise, Cam. Come on. This is not.
Cam, we were all waiting. We knew it was a good idea.
Just before we move on from the story, I know you didn't want to talk about the numbers, but 8 million users is pretty impressive. I feel like we kind of glossed over that, but shouldn't we be fairly impressed that that's decent sized scale?
You're talking about a browser market that's like, I think Opera in general has like 380 million users, something like that.
Like that seems pretty good.
Well, I think they are. I mean, they're maybe the fourth place browser or the third place browser, right? It's you've got Chrome that has like 98% of the market. You have Edge that has a little bit, and then there's like Opera, Firefox. Like there's a few of the others that are left.
What's the MSNBC or whatever? They have the esports thing, right?
Yes,
I don't
Jeff. Nailed it. Rachel Maddow talks League of Legends. every
Chrome-
day.
No, wait,
Going,
what am I
don't
talking
stop.
about? MSN browser?
I will tell you.
I don't know.
Chrome has
MSN, the sports
has
hub?
97% of the market. Chrome has 70% of the market. Edge 7.8%, Firefox 7.5%. Opera in total, just to give you some context, is 1% of the market, of the browser market.
But if they have a pretty power user niche like that, you could make an argument that like I could say Discord is a chat app. I bet Apple has 96% of the usage market share of chat apps, right?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah.
And 8 million users in any business is nothing
Right.
to scoff at, right? The question is, how do you monetize that with a free browser? It's not.
I don't know.
Like it's not obvious either.
You got to sell to Facebook, basically. It's the only way you could monetize.
But I like it. I like seeing those kinds of things where sort of gaming specialization is infiltrating other pieces of the technology stack.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's move on, guys. Let's talk about Jeff. You requested this story, so we have to cover it. It's this is from PCGamer.com, and the headline here is CD Projekt has decided to reconsider Cyberpunk 2077's multiplayer. It says in a strategy update video posted today, the studio said that it's changing course with multiplayer. Basically, I'll just read some of the highlights here. As part of a broader move towards a more agile approach to development, the studio is shifting its focus to bringing online elements to all of its games where they make sense. They say the exact nature of Cyberpunk multiplayer has never been nailed down. It was supposed to be something big. And CG Projekt CEO basically described it as a separate, dedicated production that developers consider a standalone product. Now, however, all of that plan that I just described has been scrapped. And now they're saying they want to take a totally different approach to multiplayer. And they want to reconsider their plan. And what that plan is not really clear here. That in general, they've changed their development sort of focus. So they're going to supposedly be doing more than one game at a time now. So that's new for CD Projekt. But the focus on multiplayer now, Jeff, I don't know what piece of this you wanted to discuss, but my view here was, is it the multiplayer piece or the shift in game development?
Well, it's a little bit of everything, the shift in marketing, game development, multiplayer. I mean, I think it's all interesting. It's kind of retreading a lot of what we've talked about in the past when it first came out, so we don't have to go too deep into it. But I think this is a big story in gaming. I also wanted to cover it because, like you, Paul, I like to point out when I'm right, and I was pretty much absolutely right here. I mean, I think when Cyberpunk first came out and was struggling, my whole, I think there was a lot of questions like, hey, the stock's down 20%. Should we buy it? Like, this is a good bounce back candidate. And my take at that point was, look, investors are putting a lot of hope into this multiplayer. They have no experience making multiplayer. It's not what they do. It's not going to be good. Turns out 4 months later, they pretty much scrapped the whole plan. And, they're doing some sort of scaled back version of it, which I think is smart long-term for the studio, but it's going against everything in gaming that works, right? Like the games that make sense are live service games that monetize after, that, live on and sell microtransactions. Like you are going to struggle a lot if you're trying to make The Witcher and Cyberpunk 2, in subsequent years and have that be your studio business model. Like, at that point, you are not going to justify the kind of, not even close to the kind of valuation they have now. So that was kind of the one point I wanted to point out. A couple other things in the article that I think were interesting. They talked about shortening the marketing cycle. William, I know that's something you talked about a lot on the podcast, something that you wanted to see. I think kudos to them for kind of recognizing that. They talked a lot about, what changes they're going to make for employees to kind of cut down on crunch. Kudos to them for doing that. I think that's great for the industry. What else did they talk about? Increasing development capacity, important. But again, if you're an investor, all I hear is, costs going up. So, I don't want to be too harsh on CD Projekt, but none of this is very, very good right now if you're an investor in CD Projekt.
I have a different take on this. I think strategically they just have to turn the page on Cyberpunk as fast as possible. And this is coming from somebody who has put about 30 hours into Cyberpunk and didn't I actually reasonably enjoyed it. Like, it's not a great game, but it was definitely, I think a lot of the critical panning was a little bit unwarranted for some of it, but the reality is, I think to me, this looks like the sort of announcement you make when you don't want to admit you're canceling something, but you're canceling it. You know what I mean? Like, this is everything. Oh, we're going to this is what happens when studios have a big title with a big DLC roadmap, and they all of a sudden realize they don't have the installed base to monetize that DLC. And so what do? They rethink the roadmap. They maybe strip the first milestone in a reduced format because it was already 80% done anyway. You know what I mean? At launch time, right? And then I strongly suspect that's what's going to happen here. And I think we're either going to see a very bare bones cyberpunk multiplayer. I'm talking like your existing characters dropped in, in a DLC patch that maybe is more about them testing their server architecture than it really is building out a game. But I suspect this is CD Projekt. And you sort of see it in the announcement of we're bringing it to all our franchises. Like they're going to do something in multiplayer because, to Jeff's point, they can't. They're just going to do it with a fresh property, right?
But William, so I think you're right. But you said at the beginning you had a different like, don't you agree that that's like disastrous for the stock? Right? Like
yeah.
You're basically turning your studio into one franchise studio, saying we can't do live multiplayer, and our next game's probably not going to come out for 2 years, 3 years. Like at that point, you're what's Randy Pitchford's studio that just sold Gearbox, and what did they sell for? $1 billion, right? Yeah. So like I think when the day Cyberpunk launched, wasn't it like a $10 billion market cap?
It was very
valuable. Now
you're
maybe this thing should be worth 2 or 3 now. Like that is a massive destruction of shareholder value. Like that's sad.
Well,
it's bad.
And by the way, reading between the lines of this article, they definitely leave open the idea of they're making another Cyberpunk, right? Like
I think they will. The IP, I think they will, but
it's definitely a shift away from multiplayer. If I'm reading between the lines in the article, it almost seems like the online component is more of like a launcher that just checks that you're online kind of thing. Like it doesn't seem like there's major multiplayer kind of components in there. And in the context of GTA's success as an online game, right? And Cyberpunk and GTA are extremely similar, right? In terms of construction and the style of game and the type of game that they are. You would think Cyberpunk would, the CD Projekt Red would be looking at GTA going, wait a second, like we could do that.
Yeah.
Here's a
huge opportunity there.
Here's a take and a question for you guys. I guess first of all, to your point, Paul, I think it just shows sometimes we take Rockstar and Take-Two and what they've done with GTA for granted. Like, investors particularly, because we're not, some investors aren't huge gamers and they're definitely not game developers. I think, it's very easy to be like, hey, you have this good IP, just throw a multiplayer on there, throw some microtrans. Like, how hard could it be? Like, look at what GTA did. Like, it should be easy. It's clearly not. And we've seen that time and time again. We saw it with Anthem. You saw it with the Rainbows, whatever, the Ubisoft game that bombed. You saw it with Cyberpunk. The question that I was going to pose to you, do you guys think this is the first step in sort of a slow process to CD Projekt getting sold to, say, Microsoft or Sony? Because who would benefit from massive IP that doesn't necessarily need that can serve a purpose that isn't a live service game, aka similar to Bethesda? Like, it's probably not a bad pickup if if stock gets low enough, Microsoft kind of swoops in and buys it.
I just couldn't agree. That was my thinking as soon as we were talking about this, is like the logical consequence. And I don't know how many years it's going to take, but it looks like this is a studio on a slide to acquisition. And that's not a bad thing. I'm sure they'll have very good exits and their titles will get great. But like the reality is, if you are going to do extraordinarily rich single player experiences today, that is about the one title that makes sense as an exclusive anchor, right? That is about the one business model where, because you think about it, like every other multiplayer game requires on large user bases and ubiquity of access. Exclusive titles are the very one thing where you don't want everyone to get it intentionally, right? So, and the reality is, the more, even if that's not the model they go to, if they go to a multiplayer, driven, like the more they go to that, the more they need somebody like an EA or a Microsoft with a lot of expertise, a lot of scale, right? To help them execute. There's real executional difficulties beyond making a great game and making a great multiplayer game. Like, where are you going to put your servers? How are you going to get servers close to people? Like those are real issues that are probably better solved at a scale above, a single developer churning out one title every 3 years, right?
So who buys CD Projekt Red, guys?
Microsoft.
Let's get the crystal balls out.
Do you think? Well,
actually, Sony, aren't they like a Sony? They have relationship with Sony.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
And it's in Europe, so maybe it's like more of a Sony kind of thing.
Just depending on the success of the Bethesda, acquisition, and if the exclusivity of those titles drive a lot of people to buy Xbox, I could see Sony basically looking at that market research and snapping up CDPR as soon as they can.
I mean, just to put it in context with you guys, which company would you rather own right now? 100% of Discord or 100% of CD Projekt Red?
Discord. I mean,
Discord.
But that's
CD
the point.
Projekt Red. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Discord Microsoft acquisition rumors were at 10 billion. And the high point of CDPR, where you have to assume, you know, they're going to get like is 10 billion, right? Like, I mean, I'm making the point by saying like that business model that they're on right now at the valuation they're at just doesn't comp well in market. You know, I'm sorry. And I love their games. I'm not crazy. I'm just saying, like, I think they benefited a lot from a number of choices they made that had absolutely nothing to do with the underlying economics of what they did, you know, as a business.
I think
Well, and they
Tencent
also
buys them,
hurt.
and we see Witcher Mobile and Cyberpunk Mobile.
Well, they did talk about that was another thing they talked about. Cyberpunk Mobile was mentioned in there. I think they either said they're developing it or they're contemplating developing it. They had this weird chart where it was either something they're doing, something they're contemplating doing, or something like they're thinking about contemplating doing. It was weird.
I see a Tencent or a ByteDance in there playing in there.
Tencent. It's Tencent or it's someone weird. It's someone really weird buying it. Like, I'm throwing this out there, right?
Viacom.
No, like
Yeah.
That would be weird.
They're doing really well these days.
Well, yeah, no, it could be like Epic. Like Epic buys them as an anchor for the Epic store, you know? Like,
I mean, that's really dilutive for Epic, right?
What if Shopify bought them? I don't even know what they would do with them. But what if?
That would be insane. That would.
What if Shopify
bought them?
GameStop.
2021. Everything
now
has to
we're
revolve
thinking,
around
guys.
games.
Now we're thinking.
There we go.
Gabriel says 100% Discord. Yeah, Gabriel. I don't think there's anyone here who would rather own CD Projekt Red versus Discord, right? There's no one. No one in chat. None of you guys, right?
Which is interesting because isn't there? I mean, from a multiple basis, Discord has less revenue, but obviously, I agree that I'd rather own Discord. But
yeah, I think everyone sees way bigger growth prospects there, right? That's what
it's also you're
buying
talking about a hit-driven business, media business versus a tool like a social media tool.
True. Having said that, like the market for game publishers has definitely been hotter than the market for tools,
but not from a multiple basis. But yeah.
True.
Mm-hmm. That's why the market's been hotter, because it's under multiple, I think, maybe. But anyway,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I continue to say 10 billion for Discord would be a steal. They'd be stealing it. Someone at Microsoft should go to jail for stealing it. Let's talk about guys. Let's talk about Razer. Anyone want to talk about Razer or Manticore? Which one's more interesting? Manticore.
Manticore.
No,
Razer. Let's do Razer. Let's do Razer quickly because it'll be a quick.
It's just. I mean, we can do.
We'll do both. Let's do both. Why not? Do it live.
Okay. Let's
give me the takes. Let's go. Let's do this. I have my hot chocolate tonight.
I saw you've been sipping that. You got
your sugar high, Jeff.
Somehow I got into this thing where I drink a hot chocolate every week on this podcast, probably causing me to have a heart attack or something.
So for anyone who's playing along with the Business of Esports drinking game, for those of you who don't know, maybe you're new to the live stream. Anytime you hear the word metaverse, you're supposed to take a shot. So let me try and get through this article without everyone being completely wasted. This is from HollywoodReporter.com. The headline here is Manticore Games unveils $100 million in Series C funding for core platform. It's basically they've positioned themselves as an online video game creation tool or platform. It's going to be available on Epic Games Store. And the round was led by XN, SoftBank, LVP. Returning investors include Epic Games, which led Manticore's $15 million funding round last September. And basically, the way they describe themselves, let me just sort of read the quote here. It says, "This financing underscores confidence," this is from the CEO, "in Manticore's vision of a creator-built multiverse. We are thrilled to have more resources to invest in our creators, who we see as the engine of our growth, to ultimately build the game's multiverse and the best playground for players." multiverse is a bit, this is sort of now a play on the metaverse. A multiverse is, I guess, how people are positioning the Robloxes of the world. Like where
it's like multiple metaverses.
Yeah, multiple metaverses, exactly.
It's Inception. It's like a dream within a dream.
We move
a metaverse
quickly.
within a metaverse.
So, I mean, I'm just curious what you guys think of. It's a huge round, right? $100 million.
Yeah,
Nothing
it's
to
a lot of
sneeze at
money.
here.
Yeah.
A lot of money. Do we think that there's room for, like, because Roblox occupies sort of this space of platform for developers to come and create games. I'm trying to be metaverse free in my communication here. Will Manticore disrupt? Like, do any of us think this is really disruptive to Roblox? Does anyone think this is going to be massive and there's room for 4 or 5 players like this? Just curious how you guys are thinking about Manticore, how it fits.
I think it's very interesting that Epic is the lead investor, and you also have Benchmark in there, very impressive VC. So you're raising $100 million round,
SoftBank,
and you've got
again.
good name, right? You have real investors. So this is very real. I just think it's interesting, and I don't really know what I think about it, but the fact that Epic is one of the lead investors, like, they have their own creation tools, they have their own quote unquote metaverse. So, I mean, maybe they're creating a multiverse by having a metaverse within their metaverse, but joking aside, that part to me is interesting. I don't know enough about Manticore and haven't used the tools to know, like, where they stack up between Unity, the Epic, what they have, and Roblox. But it's certainly, like, it's not surprising that they were able to raise money, because if you look at how well Unity and Roblox are doing in the public market, like, you're chasing a pretty good neighborhood. So even if you're the worst house in a good neighborhood, you're probably doing pretty well.
The question I have, which I think really dictates, and I'm not sure how I feel, but I want to ask it to group is this a winner take all market, right? In other words, is this a market where, like, 15 years from now, the multi-metaverse is here or whatever, like, is it one set of creation tools that everybody is using, right? Or is there space for a 3, 4, 5 player market here? I'm just really curious, because I don't know. And I think it really dictates how you feel about this sort of property.
Obviously,
Well,
there's no. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lindsay.
You can go first.
I was just gonna say that I don't know too much about the differences, or what could be the differences. Is there space for multiple? I'd like to hope so. I'd really like to say I hope so. One thing that comes to mind for me is if different age groups could appeal to different multi or metaverses. That's one thing I could see is, I think that Roblox is obviously very young, right? Their segment is very young. So maybe there could be one that was a little bit more, a little bit more complex, maybe, that was targeted towards more experienced people who had better development skills. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it, but I guess I'd just like to say I hope that there's room for more than one.
The age thing is exactly the point that I was going to make. I definitely think that Roblox obviously has started this market and made it very attractive. To me, it's like looking at the development of social medias. People can also coexist on several platforms at once. So I hope it's not a winner-take-all space, and I hope that people maintain multiple profiles on different development sites and are able to, go on Roblox and make, like, more silly, fun things that might be geared towards a younger audience, and then go on Manticore and make, like, hardcore shooters for anyone who's interested in that, or anything like that, really. But it doesn't strike me as a winner take all market, and I certainly hope that it's not.
What do you think, Paul? Is it winner take all? I'm really curious.
The problem is the misuse of language here for me, right? Like, what they're describing, this is not a metaverse, it's not a multiverse, right? Like, the metaverse, capital M, like, actually all caps, the metaverse that we all talk about, to me, is a winner take all market, and has to be, right? It has to be like an Amazon, or bigger and more dominant and more monopolistic, right? Like, because I think you need that scale to truly create, like, a Ready Player One kind of world. And I believe that will be a winner take all market. There will be one, and it will be the only one that people use, because that's how the metaverse This is how a metaverse makes sense. It's not like there's not multiple realities. We don't live multiple lives, right? Like if you're gonna have a universe outside of our real universe, one makes sense to me.
When you've defined the term that narrowly, then of course you're
okay. But this is so
right,
that's this is the point I'm making. Now, the way the term gets thrown around, like to me, Roblox, Manticore, any of these guys, they're not metaverses or multiverses. What they are glorified app stores. That's basically what they are. Because this is what any app store, like if you're on the Apple App Store, like iOS, right? This is what they provide. Apple gives you tools to develop apps. You develop the apps, you put it on the App Store. If people download and pay for them, Apple gets a split and the developer gets a split. How is that different from Manticore's business?
Well, I think the one thing that's differentiated, and I'm not saying I disagree with you, is that in these platforms, you have one avatar that you create that kind of travels with you. So you have an identity in the App Store. You don't have an identity in the App Store necessarily, but I don't disagree with your point. Just playing devil's advocate.
And I agreed, and I take that point. I think fundamentally it doesn't change that these are really marketplaces, they're app stores that provide some tools. And in that context, I definitely think, as with app stores, there can be many winners, right? This is definitely not winner take all in that market. There will be a Roblox, there will be a Manticore, there will be space probably for 5 or 6 more, I think, before all is said and done. The idea of providing tools and a marketplace for developers to create and sell their creations, this is not novel. Like none of this is, we can put all the fancy wording we want around it. None of this is actually creative or innovative. It's been done before, but it hasn't been done in gaming. And this is why you see the success of a Roblox and why you see Manticore raising $100 million. It's just the language, I think, that gets us all mixed up. I don't know if anyone
No, I think you're right. I mean, if you narrowly define metaverse, or if you define metaverse as you are, like the ultimate, step to it, then that would have to be by definition winner take all.
Okay.
But
I want to think about this. It's interesting. These are good arguments. My gut is I think, Paul, you're right. I think it's the abusive language that tricks me, because my gut is, I think it feels like a winner take all market to me. But when I listen to what you're saying, the market that's being built here most looks like one where there's plenty of room for fiefdoms, Yeah. Let's do Razor. I want to do Razor.
Let me just read Cam's comment. Well, Jeff is buzzing. Love it. There you go. Cam says, "Oh no, I come back and there is still metaverse talk." Yeah, Cam, I dragged you back into these live streams and you came right back to metaverse, except now feel free to drink every time we say metaverse. Let's talk about Razor. Razor in the news.
Razor.
I'm continuously amazed at Razor and how they've been growing. This is from South China Morning Post. The headline here is, Razor expects profits to continue to grow as consumers take to gaming amid pandemic. CEO Tanmin Lang says they posted a maiden net profit of $800,000 on record revenues of $1.2 billion for 2020. The company, known for its gaming PCs and peripherals, says it expects to see consistent growth moving forward. In the previous year, just to give you a sense, they had lost $83 million. So they went from an $83 million loss, like in 2019, to a $800,000 net profit in 2020.
Wait,
or
what? 800.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So what is a maiden profit? This is the first time they've ever made a profit?
Good.
Correct.
In their whole history?
It's a hardware business.
Maiden voyage.
That's surprising.
Why is that surprising?
I'm out of my depth on hardware, to be honest. That strikes me as surprising that a hardware business, that they'd never made a profit before, and then the fact that they're touting this $800,000 profit is like.
How do you feel? How do you feel about this? How do you feel about this, Jeff? They did $1.2 billion in revenue, right?
I feel like it's a shit business then, because the margins are literally zero.
Razor thin. Ironically.
If you do $800,000 in profit on a $1.2 billion revenue number, you're either, I don't know, that's bad. Like, that's very bad.
Well, look at their market cap. It's only $2.5 billion. They get a 2.5 multiple.
$2.5 billion market cap.
But when your profit margins are zero, you should get no multiple. You should get a literally like you're worth
No, we know this is not
much
true.
less than one.
Paul, is there a reason? This is a serious question because Razor's been around for a while, right? Like, is there a reason to believe that at this level of scale? Because I bet in the early days they said it's scale. Now they have scale. You got $1 billion revenue. It's tough to make the scale argument. Is there a reason to believe something fundamental has shifted? Like, has the market gotten less competitive? Like, I'm just curious. Like, has something fundamental shifted that would let you believe they could raise margins on this better than they have historically?
I think no question. I think part of the gaming hardware game is you spend a ton in development, right? There's a lot in R&D, and manufacturing is a very costly business. And at low volumes, margins are extremely compressed, right? Like unless you're selling like 5 million mice, it's a really difficult business to be profitable. I also think to get to Razer's kind of brand positioning, where you can ask any gamer if they know the Razer brand, will almost get unanimously a yes. Like I'm sure they've plowed a ton of money into marketing just to build that brand. I would not be surprised if next year's net profit number was significantly higher, like that we saw significant growth there without as much revenue growth. You know what I mean? So where margins actually improve over time.
How long have they been around? Like, shouldn't they already be, to William's point, like they should already have scale? Like you know, if you're a hardware business, like that's really the fact that this is their first time making a profit. I thought they'd been around for a long time.
They have, but it was very much a niche company for a lot. Like I had a Razer boom slang, but like at that time, no one even knew what Razer was.
Maybe I'm confusing this with the Razer phones that were super popular. I don't know. Maybe that's why I'm overrating
I think of that every time.
No, not related. That was Motorola, completely different companies.
Yeah, I know.
It's just odd to me. Like, it's one thing if you're a software business and you have recurring revenue to go into the black because into the red, you're going to come out on top because like the unit economics are good and you spend up front to acquire a customer, but then their lifetime value, you accrue. So like you're willing to spend, money to buy a business like, Zoom that's not profitable, or maybe that's a bad example because they are profitable, but a software company that has these subscriptions, recurring revenue. But like with Razer, like you would think for a hardware business that has the scale they have, like you would think they would be doing, I don't know, 15% margins at least.
It kind of makes me nervous because I just see their market space is getting a lot more competitive. Like the thing I worry about is like it seems like everybody is launching gaming specific peripherals, and like it's tough because if you're saying their positioning as brand, you have to spend aggressively to defend brand in that instance. And if you're saying their positioning as scale, it's tough to get growth when people are piling into the market. Like I actually agree with you, Paul. I think if I were going to bet on this, I would bet they would have a much higher net profit in 2022 than they would in 2021, because I agree that a lot of what concerns me is the overall trend, because they don't like, we're not going to be happy if they post a $20 million profit. You know what I mean? This is a business that needs to be posting, 200 million plus on $1 billion in revenues to, I think, look interesting. Yeah.
But don't you think there's a certain play here? Like, because I feel like I would have run Razer in a very similar way, in the sense that, like, if gaming is growing, right? The fundamental premise is there are more and more gamers coming into the ecosystem every single day, right? And gamers are graduating. So like they may use a mobile device today, they go to a PC tomorrow, right? So there's new customers coming into the market every single day. And so if I'm Razer, the play really is, let me build brand like mind share, right? If I can get someone to buy a Razer product as their first mouse, as their first headset, what I'm betting on is that there is some lifetime like customer value there, right? That they will stay loyal to the brand for their next mouse purchase, their next keyboard purchase. And I think you find this with a lot of gamers. They do become very loyal to a brand. Like, I think, William, you love your Razer mouse, right? Like, chances are you might buy another Razer mouse, I would think.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, that's true, right? Like, it's definitely true. I got into Razer and I've stayed in a Razer ecosystem. I'm looking at a Razer keyboard and a Razer mouse right now. But it's also true that I think part of why I was loyal to Razer historically was there just weren't a lot of other options. I wanted my mouse and keyboard to glow RGB, and there weren't a lot of other RGB products. Now, I mean, maybe I'm more expert in the space. Maybe I have more contact with pro gamers who give me different advice. But like, I don't know where I wouldn't say I'm high brand loyalty there, right? And in general, I'm skeptical of businesses that say, oh, let's lose a ton of money to build brand loyalty. You know, let's lose money for
particularly in hardware. I think, to my knowledge, there's literally only one business that's ever succeeded with that strategy, and it's Apple. And they also had pretty good software and technology.
And it's not
hardware
right now. It is not the hardware.
You do not have a cool
software
brand.
business that drives Apple today. Yeah.
Like, let's say the next company comes out with a mouse that's better technologically, your brand goes out the window, right? Nobody's going to use your inferior product if the technology.
Particularly when it's a performance market. Like if there is a mouse, just hypothetically, let's say there is a new mouse that makes you aim 2% better, right? Like, bam. Like that's it. That mouse is the gold standard. This is like if you're in the gas efficient car market and a more gas efficient car company, like this is a performance market, and those make me uncomfortable because I think a significant portion of the gamer base doesn't buy on brand loyalty. They buy on performance. And the only difference has been historically performance has been very difficult. It's an airy thing. And so brand is a very good proxy for perceived performance, right? Like I feel like this must be a better gaming device because it glows. So like it's probably got to help me game better. But I do think we're at a stage where the performance is, and I thought didn't we hear that on the podcast when we had who was on the podcast? Paul, remind me, didn't we?
Logitech, you mean?
Logitech, yeah. Wasn't that a whole thing Logitech was saying to us? Or
well, Logitech's whole philosophy is like all about performance, right?
Yeah.
Like that's their reason for being. It's about, can we increase the player's performance? I 100% agree with you, William. The question is, what percentage of the market is that? Because I'm that guy, right? Like if my Cooler Master mouse today, which I love because it's light and it fits my hand perfectly, right? If tomorrow there's, if in a month from now, Final Mouse is coming out with their all magnesium mouse, right? It's even lighter. If that one I decide is superior to my current one, I'm going to buy it, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that's probably not 100% of the market. I think there's a lot of the market that's like, I love my Razer headphones. If these break, I'm buying more Razer headphones. Like I do think there is some percentage of the market that is just brand loyal and recognizes that Razer's good enough or is high performance and therefore good enough for them. You know what I mean? They're not oh my God, is this other brand's mouse is 1 or 3 grams lighter than the Razer mouse, so I have to switch.
I just think when you're talking about a technology hardware business, like, what does Apple trade at on a PE basis? Like 25 times, 20 times, like, it used to trade below the market, right? Below the S&P, which was nuts, but it did. This is now trading 335 times earnings, right? Like that doesn't make sense. Now I get the earnings are super depressed, but it's like in order to William's point, in order to justify a $3 billion market cap, like how much how much free cash flow do they have to show over the next couple of years? Like probably a pretty significant amount.
Not when you're in a high growth space though, Jeff, right? Like, as well as I do in the gaming space where growth is not linear, right? Where you have all this exponential growth for all these companies.
I don't know.
That they're trading on revenue multiples right now, right? And 2 times revenue in the context of other players in the space doesn't seem that.
I just don't think it applies when you're talking about selling physical goods, right? Like if you were talking about, a metaverse or something like that, where you could see like exponential growth, like you're not going to get exponential growth out of selling mice, right? Like there are a certain number of people, like anyone who's a gamer currently owns a mouse. Each one has its own unique sort of refresh cycle. So maybe of your install base, a quarter buy a new mouse every year, right? Because they're staggered when they bought it. Probably, maybe when you put out a new product, you pull some of that demand forward. But like you are not all of a sudden going to have 1 billion people go buy a mouse next year. It's just not going to.
It's also true that the turn the lights off argument doesn't apply here. Like a lot of software businesses can just say, look, we could literally shut everything down and collect checks for the next 4 years, like at 100% margin because we, it's just it's interesting. But I think, Paul, I'm more on your side though than I am Jeff's, unfortunately. Jeff, sorry. I think Paul's right. I don't
know what we're arguing. I just think
do any of you guys like the marketing around Razer? Because So the way the market talks about them, it's quoted in this article. They're called, the analysts call them the Nike of esports. Do you think this
They
plays
are.
a part in that? Victoria, Lindsay, I don't know if you guys have a thought on sort of that marketing spin, right?
They do a fantastic job, and I've been itching to ask this question since we've started the discussion on Razer. I was with Jeff. I was actually pretty surprised in terms of their margins, and I didn't know that they weren't profitable for longer. That was a bit of a surprise. And then all of a sudden, I'm thinking about their recent announcement of their green initiative. Did you guys see this? So they
No.
have like a 10-year commitment plan to be greener and have like a 100% neutral, to be 100% carbon neutral. They're going to use like recyclable materials, just use all green energy. And I mean, that's all great, but then I'm thinking that's got to be expensive, one. And also, it doesn't add that performance, right? It doesn't add that extra piece of performance. So I just thought that was interesting. Obviously, a huge marketing ploy. Just interesting, you know, how that's going to look on their.
But don't you think that fits with the whole Nike of esports thing, Victoria? Because I think most like serious runners don't wear Nike running shoes, right? There are definitely brands that are more like runner specific, hardcore, right? They're lighter, they're more customized, they come in different, you know, configurations. Like I know serious runners, most of them don't wear Nike, right? And so Nike's kind of like the lifestyle sporting brand for the masses. Maybe that's the right comparison here because of what you just said, which is, you know, it's not so much about the very best performance, and it's not so much about, you know, the highest quality materials. Like if I felt I could play better, I'd buy a mouse with the you know, the lubricated in baby's tears or something, you know, like I don't, you know, like
Oh my God. Best
like,
example of the night.
There's a segment that's like hardcore performance at all costs, right? And there's a segment that just care about more like, what does the brand represent? And, you know, how do I feel about using it? And I think Razer has occupied that space really nicely now. I don't know.
Yeah,
Lindsay,
no, 1,000%. I was just going to say that if you want to position yourself in a nice, responsible way, I just didn't know if that was the best choice for them. I think they could have given back to the community in a way that just was a little bit more well aligned with their brand. That was my perspective. I think going like one thing that when I ordered a Razer headset, it was, I don't know, sub $150. The packaging was beautiful, wasteful. Oh my gosh, yes, wasteful, but it was beautiful. And I felt very happy with my purchase. It felt premium to me, even though it's like an entry level mic.
Yeah, well, that's also why they're not making any money.
But also, guys, what's interesting is the evolution. In 2005, when I bought the Razer Boomslang, right? This was a world where everyone was using Microsoft mice, like office mice, basically, to play games.
The fact that they've been around since 2005 and this year was their maiden time they've ever made a profit, you are the prophet. How can that be acceptable?
But
I have a few businesses that take 16 years.
But I was getting to this, right?
Like when are they gonna find the oil under the headquarters? Like how can you justify 16 years of losses to make $800,000? When just if you look at Nike, so just for some stats, because your comparison to the brands is probably fair, but Nike has had 10 to 15% profit net profit margins for the last decade. And they have historically traded at 25 to 30 times earnings, right? So this company has never made a profit, and they're trading 300 times earnings.
But did you look at the first 10 years of Nike or 15 years of Nike? Because I have a funny feeling.
I didn't. But
I have a funny feeling. I don't know. I actually don't know. But I have a funny feeling they followed a similar path. And the story I was getting at was when I bought that mouse in 2005, Razer was the hardcore brand. Like no one knew about it, right? You had to know a guy who told you about it. You know, it was a $100 mouse at a time when gaming mice, you know, it was $10 or it came with the PC that you bought, right? So
Compact Presario, they had some sweet pack-in deals.
And so Razer was the hardcore brand, and I think at some point they decided, being the mainstream brand, the Nike, even though it may be very expensive to build that, right? And you may not make, because I think had they stayed hardcore, they would have had they would have been more profitable sooner, is my point, right? More niche, much smaller revenue, but better margins. And I think they made the decision to go big and go mainstream. And that's just a different sort of life cycle. Like it just follows a different path.
Right. Just a quick side note to Jeff's point. I agree with everything you said, Paul. To Jeff's point about the packaging, and that's why they weren't making any money. Like light bulb, this is why they did the green initiative. They're just covering it up, right? They're gonna probably decrease their packaging, slim it down, squeeze those margins, and they're just gonna position it.
Victoria.
I
But
know.
That was the first thing I thought of when you said green initiative. I was like, they'll change their packaging now.
Yeah. They're
Oh
gonna
my
save
gosh,
money.
you guys are heartless.
Are the mice?
Why is that heartless?
Are the mice lubricated with baby's tears though? Are the mice feet lubricated with baby's tears?
Oh, we're gonna work on that together. We're gonna work on like
I was there to witness Paul.
I just can't believe you're the prophet of esports,
mice.
but yet you just have such a soft spot for hardware businesses, Paul. That is
do.
blinding you. You literally, this business has never made money. How much have they burned in investor dollars?
It's sort of like being the market leader of, like Thermopylae. You know what I mean?
Amazon
like
also wasn't profitable for a decade.
Right, but they
didn't
building,
turn a profit for a decade.
Come on, they were building scale distribution centers.
I'm just saying.
They also were, it's a very. Come on.
Also software.
If Razer becomes truly the Nike of esports for the next decade, I think we will be having a different conversation 10 years.
Yeah, we'll
from
look
now.
really dumb.
Right, is my feeling. Gabriel says I keep forgetting that Razer is a mice maker. They do make mice. And Cam says tons of users who think Razer is the pinnacle. Yeah, I think. Just look on Twitch. Like, look how many people are using Razer keyboards and headphones. And
not to I'd like to beat dead horses, but like the fact that all of you are saying this troubles me even more. The fact that you all agree that this is the best brand out there, and with all of that and all of the scale advantages, having $3 billion in revenue, they still couldn't make a dime. That's very bad.
Very good point. Like and this is something that somebody said to me once. Like, it's possible to be the market leader in a junk market, and like it's. Yeah, no, I don't agree.
No, you're
with that,
right. You're right, William.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's the case here.
No, I don't think that's the case here either. But Jeff, it's interesting for me because I am a little blinded by the fact that there is just an effect where it's like it is the known brand, right? It is the thing where if you're going to tell somebody, like if you asked me to hold up a product and say this is esports, I would probably hold up a Razer Chroma, mouse, right? Like they're that ubiquitous in the space. And I'm asking myself now, am I blinded by like what's the actual economics of this model here? Am I blinded by the fact that brand, anyway.
It's revenue growth. It just I don't think you can ignore that. Christian said, I'm with Jeff on the whole profitability of the hardware business makes my eyes scream. There you go, Jeff. You got Christian on your side.
Christian loves it. Yeah, Christian says it's good.
All right, guys. I only had one other. I had actually two things, and we only have time for one of them. We can do Snap Games unveiling a multi-game partnership with European developer Gismart. We have Niantic's 5G game demo, which we can talk about. Or we have Activision ordering Call of Duty stats site SBMM Warzone to shut down. And if we don't want to talk about any of them, we can go.
Let's do them all. No, I think the most interesting one is probably Snap Games, but I don't.
Yeah,
I don't
do
know.
Snap Games.
I don't know what the take is, but
some of these feel meatier. I don't want to give them short thrift either. Like, let's do Snap Games, and then what are we playing? I want to tell you guys because I played a lot. I want to tell you some games I played. That's my segment. That's the only segment I prepare for, Jeff.
You're right.
By the way,
I do usually come unprepared for that one.
I will just mention also there was this story, guys, which after the Qualcomm story last week, I just thought was interesting. It's not totally related, but oh geez, what's going on here? Hang on. There we go. Oh. Okay. Well, that story. We're not doing that story.
Just as an aside, do you think people like when we continuously argue about the same things or dislike? I'd like to hear in the comments.
Well, in the meantime, let me talk about Snap Games here.
We do have a lot of recurring arguments.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh.
Well, the headline here: Snap Games unveils multi-game partnership with European developer Gismart. The hyper-casual focused company will launch its second title, Crazy Run, on Snapchat. So Snapchat unveiled this multi-game cross-platform partnership where basically with Gismart, they're going to launch their games on Snap, obviously. And as part of the deal, Snapchat's going to extend its what they call Bitmoji for games technology and social interactive tools to Gismart. So there's some exchange of technology, and Gismart is going to put their games on Snapchat. The one game that they did put on, they launched their first game on Snapchat in 2019. That game has amassed 41 million unique players, and 45 million Snapchatters have played since launch. What do you guys think of Snapchat getting into gaming in a more serious way and not going and developing games themselves, but like going and partnering with a games developer who's just going to bring games, very hyper casual games, obviously, to their platform?
Feel great about it. I think
like
it's a
it,
really
Victoria?
smart move. I really like it. There are like Snapchat still has such a loyal usership among younger demographic. I don't use Snapchat anymore, but I have heard from, I have friends with younger siblings, and that's all they use. That's all they use to chat. I can't believe it. They're still using it. And to Lindsay's point, they're still using Instagram just as heavy. They're still staying up to date on their Facebook, even though they're not actively using it. And they just kind of toggle between the two, mostly Instagram and Snapchat. Anyways, the point being, I think this is smart. They're not trying to develop themselves, right? But they have that usership, they have that loyalty, and I think it's just an easy transition or integration, I should say.
Genius idea.
You like it, William?
Well, you got to do something as a platform right now to stay relevant in this space. And I think there's a lot more room for interactivity in social media. And apart from anything else, these things are basically launchers. Like they're launchers for content, right? If you can launch video, if you can launch images, why can't you launch games? So I think it makes a ton of sense. I mean, I let's be honest, these games, Crazy Run, I mean, come on, guys. Like that's why I was like, I mean, this is not the pinnacle of game design. But again, I think it probably doesn't have to be. It just has to live well integrated into the platform. And I think that probably makes a partnership strategy make a ton of sense. The value here isn't the IP. I don't think Crazy Run is going to be getting a movie, anytime soon. The value here is just a solid, well-built game integrated into the platform, which screams outsource,
The question is also like, I come back to this partnership versus like build question. And if you look at other social platforms, almost everyone else has bought or built, or at least been trying to. Snapchat, even with like video, has taken a partnership approach where, again, most of the other platforms have gone like let's produce original content or let's be a streaming platform, right? Like they've taken a very much more build or buy approach.
Are you saying they should become a developer, like have their own games?
I mean, that wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility, right? They've got a huge
but I think you want
audience.
to stay as a platform. I mean, part of the benefit is that you're a platform. You don't have the kind of IP risk and the blockbuster hit risk. But I think this is a good idea. I don't think it will work. The combination of gaming and social media has kind of been around for a while. I mean, clearly everyone probably remembers back in the day with the Facebook games, and that's sort of how Zynga got their initial start. Then Facebook moved sort of away and de-emphasized gaming, almost killed Zynga, and then they had to kind of get brought back from the dead on mobile. So this isn't a novel concept, but I would say that a few, multiple companies have tried it since. Hasn't really worked here in the West. Chat gaming has worked a lot in Asia, and I think we typically in the West here always are a few years behind Asia. So I think at some point, someone will probably figure this out. But I just don't think it's going to be Snapchat. No real strong reason why. But I don't think it will. Yeah.
Well, why are you guys not like super excited about this? I don't understand. We just did a story about a multiverse raising 100 million. Please explain to me, assuming Snapchat gives tools in the long run to developers to put games on Snapchat, right? How are they any different from all the metaverses, multiverses, Roblox, Manticore. The only difference is between, in my view, between Snapchat and Manticore is Snapchat has 265 million daily active users, right? Like,
what's different about this versus when Facebook did Facebook games and Facebook Messenger games? Like, it's the same thing.
I mean,
Not really, though, because the use for Facebook Messenger is fundamentally different than the use of Snapchat. Snapchat is used as a communication tool, even in the same way that text is. Facebook Messenger is used as a communication tool, as a arm of Facebook. And the way people interact with Facebook is completely different.
Yeah, but like, Facebook games were successful. It's not like Facebook games were not successful.
Well, I mean, didn't they like sort of de-emphasize it or shut it down? Like, I don't think it's like, it's not like Mark Zuckerberg on the earnings call. It's like, hey, Facebook games generated 50 billion in revenue this quarter. It's kind of like, okay, it just happened.
So you're telling me if Facebook tomorrow says we're going to provide a platform, right, where developers can come on Facebook, build games, and we're going to push them through the Facebook, we're going to surface them the way we surface video across the Facebook network. You don't think that would be a success? I think it probably
wasn't that
would.
Literally like Facebook 1.0. Like, that was like exactly what Facebook was, basically, right? Like, that's how Zynga started, and all these, Farmville, like, it was a Facebook game. So wasn't that exactly?
But that was like that. You're talking about
it was
that
successful.
Created.
They moved to a better business model, which was like monetizing our data, and realized everyone didn't like, getting grandma's Farmville and Candy Crush like notifications.
Oh, I love it. It's all the only reason why I play Candy Crush.
Jeff, I
don't think it's a bad idea. And like, we've seen clearly, like, the crossover between social and chat and gaming in Asia is a slam dunk. I just don't know. It's not revolutionary, I guess is my point. Like, if it worked, I wouldn't be shocked, but it's not like I'm going to be like, oh, wow, like Snapchat, you just thought of like the crazy, no one's ever thought of it. The platform that I think missed the boat, and I've said this before on the live stream in terms of gaming, is Zoom. I think if Zoom had come out with consumer facing games that you could play with people over video, that would have been a smash hit. And they kind of, I'm sure they had we've had this conversation where they had a million other things they were worried about this year, but that would have been a massive consumer success.
Cam says Snapchat entering the metaverse. Wow. Look, I think Snapchat is the sleeper social platform. And if they get gaming right, I think even more so. I find they don't get enough credit for some of the things they've done and continue to do successfully. Again, because it's for the reason we sort of ignore, like, or we don't talk a lot about Fortnite, because none of us are in the Fortnite or Roblox like age
just to
group.
Play devil's advocate, didn't TikTok just announce like a $4 billion gaming acquisition? So why are we like saying Snapchat, who probably invested like nothing in this, should get all the credit when it's the TikTok's doing the exact same thing?
I'm not saying they should get all the credit. I'm saying any of these platforms that are getting into gaming, whether partnership or through buying, we should give them some credit.
I agree.
And I think the original question I asked is, most of what I've seen is buying or building. To your point, TikTok bought, right? Whereas Snap has taken across the board for video, gaming, for everything. They've taken this partnership track, which is different from the other platforms. I don't think anyone else has had a pure partnership kind of strategy.
I just think more things embedding gaming just makes sense, regardless of if it was a deprecated model for Facebook. I would probably argue today Facebook could do it like a lot of the problems with that older model is the games weren't like they weren't they weren't meaningful content. They were clicker fests, I think over time, and that's sort of my reservation here, but I really think that integrating meaningful interactive comment in a platform that's fundamentally about interaction between people, like, how is that a strategic misstep? You know what I mean? Like, I just abstractly, like,
no,
how
it's
is
not.
that?
I'm just saying, like, this has been tried before. It will only work if they create games that make sense to play in Snapchat, right? It has to make sense. If they're just going to create Candy Crush in Snapchat, why would I open that versus the Candy Crush app? Or, download in the App Store. It has to be some, like the perfect example, like the game that sort of worked, but like even that didn't really work. Like Words with Friends in chat apps makes a ton of sense, right? Because you're talking to someone. You could also be playing Words with Friends. It's very natural progression. But like playing Call of Duty Mobile in Snapchat, there's no point to that.
Yeah, there's no point.
Skype did
And I know
that.
that's not what you're arguing for, but it has to, and it's the same argument we always have with about cloud gaming. It's like the games there has to be a reason why you want to play it on Snapchat, because otherwise, why would you play that game on Snapchat versus playing any other game that you have downloaded on your app store? Has to have a unique use case.
Yeah,
there has to be a fit, right? The platform has to fit the game. No question. Christian says, I think that partnership makes sense, but emojis are already avatars for games. Yeah. And this is kind of what I like about this partnership. It's two-way, right? So you're going to get integration of Snapchat tech in the games, which I think is interesting. Crazy Run, a game for kids to avoid their parents. Gabriel says, will anyone that doesn't have Snapchat download it for the games? Gabriel, I don't know how you guys feel about this. It's a good question. I think no.
No, but I don't think that isn't the question that I would use to discredit it, because I don't think that necessarily matters whether this is successful or not. It can drive retention versus adoption.
I was actually going to say the opposite. I could see this working for if I chat with, a couple of my friends on Snapchat religiously, and I could actually see them playing games with me and them going from complete non-gamers into gaming.
The question is, will they download Snapchat just for that? I don't think so.
No, sorry. I was saying the opposite.
Yeah.
I was saying I could see people who otherwise would not play like a mobile app game or anything like that end up playing with their friends because they're already there and it's easy, it's integrated.
Cam says, I think this is good. Snapchat can absolutely build itself into a casual game platform for simple leaderboard / against your friends. They have a world map. You could have tourneys, lots of potential. I agree, Cam. It's good.
Very cute.
Cam says, because this is about Snapchat, Jeff, stay on track. No more hot chocolate.
Thanks, Cam.
Neil Duffy. Neil asks, what does the professor think about Becker College shutting down? Couldn't he give 10% of the Book of Esports proceeds to fill its endowment coffers for a decade? William, this question's all for you.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't, Neil. I think you could also endow a couple colleges with the fruits of your success. But I mean, I don't want to say too much about it, but it's a sad story. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very sad story. A college that I really care about is, its legacy is probably going to be charting in a way that isn't where we'd like to be. But yeah, I don't think there's a lot more to offer on it. It's unfortunate. It's it's not what I had hoped for. I really enjoy Becker like a lot. It's okay. I mean, I think I care a lot that the professors and the students land in good places, and I think that will happen. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit tough. But I don't have anything specific I can share there, Neil. Sorry, but I can specifically tell you what amazing games I've been playing. Can I do that, please?
Before we get to that, I just want to make one comment, William, if you'll allow. Which is like, it's totally against the trend, right? Like, you see more and more universities every day announcing esports programs. I think the challenge has been for smaller universities is with COVID, like enrollment's down, right? And they're all struggling.
Yeah, I mean, I assume this has nothing to do with the esports program.
Yeah, that's
right?
it. Exactly. That's the point I was going to make.
Yeah.
If anything, the esports program may have attempted to help save them by bringing more people into the college,
but when enrollment's down across the board and you need to make cuts, there's not. I don't think.
Now you're a free agent, though, William. What any colleges you're looking at?
Seneca College, College, our esports program.
Do you need an agent? I can probably negotiate.
You wanna rep me in the adjunct faculty market?
Yeah, I mean, I think this could be. I think we should set you up.
I'm a heavy hitter.
Course, University of Phoenix. We'll get you.
Phoenix Online. That would be my. Yeah, that's a good one. There's a lot of scale.
Because otherwise, you can't be the professor anymore. I'm just saying, like you get like 6 months before we might start to strip the title.
I'm pretty sure I'll be able to keep teaching, but we'll have to see. If you want to agent me, I'd be happy to do that.
William, we're hiring.
Well, hold on. If you listen to this week's podcast, I'm gonna ruin one thing for those who've been here this long for the whole live stream. William pulled out Lagrange points in an argument he was making about esports. Okay, this is a theoretical. This is a physics thing, and so anyone who can do that, anyone who can pull out Lagrange points in an esports argument is the professor forever. Okay, there's no one taking that title from him.
Super
ever.
Nerdy, but I did, and I did use it correctly too.
You did.
Like,
you did.
Yeah.
I checked after.
Yeah.
Gabriel says, I just don't see my friends that don't play mobile games playing something like that. I've tried to get them to play mobile games. Yeah, I think it's really for people who are on Snapchat already. Cam says, private teaching, William. Let me know. There you go. Hired gun. All right, guys. Let's close this up. Let's do our every week's our favorite segment. What are we playing this week? William, you wanted to start. You said you were playing a ton of stuff.
Yeah. I played a bunch of stuff. I played Star Wars Rogues. I played Star Wars Squadrons properly to get into that because I missed it. I'm not saying I played for like hundreds of hours, but like I actually tried. I continued playing Undertale, and I played Valorant, and I did really well. I was top of leaderboards in some games. We talk about it on the podcast. Spoiler alert: there was a business reason to be playing some Valorant. But I literally had 25 kill games. It was amazing. But I have to say, interestingly, the game that brought me back was Undertale. I don't know why. It's just it is really odd, but it's charming. I don't know what else to say. No wonder it was such a big hit. It really passed me by, but I find it disarmingly authentic, and it's not a great game by many principles, but it's consistently of a type that is a rare type in gaming, and I find that quite appreciative. So,
did anyone play It Takes Two? I've heard nothing but rave reviews about this game.
Not yet, so I can't wait to play.
I feel like, Victoria, that would be right up your alley, and you guys could play it together.
Yeah.
Anytime I see that game mentioned, I always just think Take Two. I initially just think Take Two. It kind of confuses me.
And the other thing I heard a lot about all week was how great Hades is on Nintendo Switch. So has anyone tried that?
Good. It's so well. I mean, I mastered it on PC. So, but seriously, guys, if you have not played Hades, Hades is it's brilliant. Get it. It's so. It doesn't matter what you play it on. It's absolutely brilliant. Just the best game of a long time.
Martin says chess, just chess, and Cam says Paul and William should stream it together. William, should we play It Takes Two?
I think we
together?
should actually, Paul. We should talk about that. I would love to do our inaugural stream is It Takes Two.
I saw the cutest tweet of someone who was playing It Takes Two, and as they were playing it, they tweeted out, my girlfriend doesn't know it yet, but I'm gonna propose to her when we beat the game. And then an hour later, there was another tweet of him proposing at the end of the game.
Oh, I thought it was going to be sad. Turns out she wasn't good enough to beat the game.
Christian says, beat the Ratchet and Clank 2016 remake and 2 rounds of Words with Friends with Grandma. Well, Words with Friends. We brought it up this week. And Martin says, yeah, I play Hades on Switch. Love it. Lindsay, did you play Hades on Switch? Because you're a big Switch gamer.
Yeah, I haven't yet. My husband plays it on the PC, but I didn't even know it was available on Switch. I spent the week playing Chill Panda.
Chill Panda?
Yeah.
You still haven't been able to steal the PC?
I have not tried to steal the PC. Okay. It's not a question of ability.
Got it. Jeff, is it even worth asking you? Considering you didn't know your ring light had Wi-Fi.
I did not play any games this week. Sometimes I do. I play Madden sometimes, but I didn't play this week.
We are gonna fix the ring light though.
Yeah,
I didn't know ring light. Why would it need Wi-Fi? Although
anything need Wi-Fi.
The lights in my apartment have Wi-Fi, but I figured out how to connect.
There you go.
Andy says Rocket League on iOS coming soon. Andy, yes, and in fact, thank you for that.
We probably should have talked about that, but maybe next time.
We talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, but I'm not on the podcast, and I want to opine.
So tune into the podcast tomorrow, Andy, because we talk at length about Rocket League coming on iOS. And I'm just curious. Because we have 2 minutes left. Who here thinks Rocket League on mobile is going to make a huge impact in the esports space? It's just a yes or no, or raise a hand, or whatever.
No.
No. Does anyone think Rocket League mobile becomes Call of Duty mobile big or PUBG mobile big?
Yeah, I could see it.
Maybe.
I could see it.
Yeah, that's hard.
It's a misleading question because it will propel Rocket League to new heights as a feeder. It's a misleading question. Yeah. It's not that the mobile property will be, although it could be good. It could be good. It's not what the mobile property will do by itself, but what we'll do together. That's what I believe.
And Cam says Valheim, Destiny 2, Fortnite. Cam, have you not beat Valheim yet, or has the new content come out? Because actually, I'm not sure. But I feel like the replayability there was low until the new content comes out. All right, guys.
I got skipped.
What?
Wow.
Oh,
Oh,
Victoria,
I thought you
got
said
skipped.
you were playing It Takes Two. You were going to play It Takes Two. Sorry.
Well, I'm going to, but
Okay.
it's okay. It's pretty much being skipped because I only played Warzone this week, which I know no one cares about. So
Warzone, everyone cares about. Everyone's. It was. It was.
well,
in the
I mean,
news
you
this
guys.
week.
I mean, you guys. I get chirped for
I
just
care
playing,
way more about you playing that than Jeff's monologues. So go ahead.
I feel very attacked tonight.
No,
You shouldn't. You were the one doing most of the talking.
Here's the
Wow.
question for you, Victoria. Did you see all
That's
the
offensive.
fighting online, like on Twitter and social this week between Courage, JD, like 100 Thieves Courage, and Dr. Disrespect, where 100 Thieves Courage was like ranting and complaining about everything in Warzone that was broken.
I did
and-
see some snippets of it. Yeah.
And Dr. Disrespect says basically like stop complaining. Like I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of the Warzone like community is really
Tough.
they're very vocal. Let's put it that
Very
way.
vocal. Very vocal. There are a lot of issues though. Like there are a lot of glitches. I'm constantly seeing posts about them or experiencing them myself, so it's interesting. I don't know.
Doesn't stop you from playing it though, and the millions
It
of
doesn't.
others from
No,
playing it.
I get frustrated, but no, it doesn't stop me.
Cam says new Warzone update is rough. Well, there you go. So anyways, that wraps up, guys, this week's episode of the live stream. As always, please stay tuned for the podcast tomorrow. Definitely check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's a great episode. We've got an incredible guest, the Chief Revenue Officer at Misfits Gaming, Lagan Nash. We talk about Rocket League Mobile. We talk about all those fun things. Also, check out all the other content we're putting out, guys. Follow us on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube if you haven't already. Would really appreciate that. And I know a lot of you have bought William's book. If you have, go leave a review on Amazon. I know a lot of you have bought it and have not left a review. Neil says, when can I be a guest on the after show? Neil, you can come on any week you want.
Anytime.
So you just let me know. Okay. And as always, guys, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, William. Thank you, Victoria, for everything. Thank you, all of you guys who showed up, who commented, who asked questions, who gave your opinion. We really appreciate it. Tell people about the live stream. We really appreciate it. And as always, guys, we will see you next week, 8:30 p.m. Wednesday nights, every single week. See you next week.